This week on ANN, an annual conference highlights the significance of Jesus.
Technology connects church elders in Inner America.
And remembering the legacy of Morris Venden.
These stories and more, coming up.
This is ANN, a service of the Seventh-day Adventist World Church. Thanks so much for joining us this week.
First in the news, a small group of pastors who first met 3 years ago has grown into an annual gathering of thousands of Adventists seeking a closer connection with Jesus. The communication department for the church in North America sent this report.
My hope is built on nothing less.
In early February, more than 700 people gathered from all over the United States to meet in Chicago with one purpose in mind: celebrating the supremacy of Jesus in the Seventh-day Adventist Church through the One Project.
Everything in life, behind us, in front of us, girding us, lifting us up, everything is Jesus Christ. And the period for us, the full stop for us, was really the point that just says His name alone is enough.
I think it was born of a desire simply to have a richer experience with Jesus for ourselves, but then also for our congregations, for our church.
According to organizers, the One Project is not just another event. It helps participants to focus and refocus their ministry around what's important: Jesus, period, all, period.
But each year, since we've done this now, we actually come up with a new a theme that kind of like we want to articulate underneath Jesus all, and this year it's just Jesus.
Participants were able to attend breakouts with other trained ministry leaders as well as powerful worship services. Also, they shared their joys and challenges during candid discussions centering around worship and cross-cultural ministry to relevancy and intergenerational churches, just to name a few.
I guess what I'm hoping to walk away with is even more clear vision of just a simplified faith.
Not only have these gatherings changed the lives of the participants, but it has also enhanced the lives of its organizers.
Finding Jesus again personally and realizing that's what I was called to, and that He hadn't abandoned me, but He loves me, and seeing what He would do even in brokenness. Man, that's what transformed me.
Organizers for the One Project are already planning for the 2014 event to happen in Seattle, Washington, February 10 through 11. To stay socially connected with the organization, follow them on Twitter and like them on Facebook. This is George Johnson reporting for Adventist News Network.
Adventist leaders in Inter-America connected with thousands of church elders across the region for a virtual council last week. The 2-hour live webcast was meant to support continued teamwork between church elders and pastors. There are currently more than 30,000 church elders serving alongside 3,000 pastors in Inter-America. With many pastors in the region overseeing multiple churches, church elders play a significant role in supporting congregations. Many pastors rely on elders to handle member visitation, small group leadership, and other aspects of spiritual nurture. The council marks the largest live webcast organized by the church in Inter-America. Church leaders say the move signals a growing commitment to promoting better communication between church leaders and lay people.
A popular Adventist missionary program based in the Philippines is celebrating 20 years of outreach. The 1,000 Missionary Movement was launched in 1993 to train and challenge 1,000 young people to serve as missionaries worldwide every year. 2 decades later, the ministry has expanded to Korea and has sent missionaries to countries as far away as Israel and Bangladesh. Church leaders gathered at the celebration took the opportunity to thank supporters and challenge young people to embrace mission outreach. Church leaders also dedicated a missionary memorial building meant to highlight God's guidance in the past and transmit missionary experience to a new generation.
As the government of Myanmar moves towards democratic reform, Adventists and other minority church leaders are calling for increased freedom of belief. Adventist churches across Myanmar recently celebrated Religious Liberty Sabbath for the first time. Church leaders in the country say the event was an important opportunity to shape the church's public image.
The Adventist Church in the Dominican Republic recently dedicated 25 new churches across the island country. The move addresses growing church membership in the Dominican Republic. Church leaders say maintaining existing worship facilities and building new ones is a priority in the country. 25 more Adventist churches are scheduled for renovation later this year.
And finally this week, Adventists worldwide are remembering the ministry and legacy of Morris Venden, who died last week at age 80. A pastor, guest speaker, and prolific author, Venden was known for bringing a renewed emphasis on Jesus and the theology of grace to the Adventist Church. Venden pastored several college and university churches during his ministry. Later in life, he served as associate speaker at the Voice of Prophecy ministry based in the U.S. state of California. Friends and colleagues say Venden's ministry was informed by his own spiritual journey. In his early 30s, Venden realized he lacked a strong personal relationship with Jesus. Renewing that connection led him to promote salvation through Jesus rather than empty legalism. A memorial service for Venden is scheduled for Sunday, March 3rd at the Loma Linda University Adventist Church in California.
Coming up, support for pastoral families.
An army of youth, mobilized on the streets of the world, united in service, and driven by His command, go and do likewise. What would it look like? You. Join 8 million youth around the world as they leave the building to be the church. We can make a difference, one act of kindness at a time. Today, you are the sermon.
When I was reading through The Great Hope, this phrase came across that I found very interesting. While the investigative judgment is going forward in heaven, while the sins of penitent believers are being removed from the sanctuary, there is to be a special work of purification, of putting away of sin among God's people upon earth. You see, Jesus is doing His thing up in heaven, but we also need to do our thing here on earth. And what is that? Giving it our all to God, giving everything to Him, bowing down at the foot of the cross. And you know what the cross means? The cross means Christ's redemption, obliterating Satan's schemes. Satan's schemes have no power over us. God is first and only.
If you go out in the night and you look up in the heavens and you see all the stars, and now with the Hubble telescope seeing billions of stars, and people say that there isn't a God in His creation, I have a real problem with that as an engineer, because everything in engineering is done with mathematics. 1 and 1 is 2. It's not 3.5. It's not 1.8. It's all math. And God is perfect, and math is a perfect science.
Welcome back. The March issue of Ministry Magazine highlights the rewards and challenges pastors and their families face. Willie Hucks has a preview.
Ministry Magazine is a journal devoted to positively impacting the lives and ministries of pastors of all denominations worldwide. Since its inception in 1928, Ministry has maintained a threefold purpose: to fortify the spiritual walk of pastors with God, to develop intellectual strength, and to provide resources for effective ministry in its various phases, with emphasis on evangelism and church growth. In the March issue of Ministry, we are featuring the pastoral family. I wish to give a big thank you to Dr. Willie and Mrs. Elaine Oliver, directors of the Department of Family Ministries for the General Conference, for their assistance in planning this issue. Considering the joys and challenges that pastoral families encounter, I conducted an interview with Willie and Elaine that I believe you will find both informative and inspirational. Among the other articles featured, we addressed the topics of maximizing pastoral and parental satisfaction in the pastoral family, managing pastoral stress, and the importance of family bonding time while eating meals together within the context of the pastoral home. On behalf of the editorial staff of Ministry Magazine, we hope you enjoyed this issue. If you wish to let us know what you think about this month's issue or any other month, please contact us at facebook.com/ministrymagazine or ministrymagazine@gc.adventist.org.
The Adventist Development and Relief Agency provides sustainable community development and disaster relief in more than 120 countries worldwide. One of those countries is Zimbabwe, where ADRA is building wells for remote schools.
This remote school in eastern Zimbabwe has no access to clean water. The Adventist Development and Relief Agency, or ADRA, recently sent a team to drill a well for these thirsty children. This massive rig, owned by ADRA, is capable of drilling deep into the earth to find water. As the drill bores deeper, 5-meter lengths of pipe are added. The ADRA team takes regular soil samples. So far, they're bone dry. They've reached 40 meters and still no water. Everyone is hoping, praying, and holding their breath. The depth is now 80 meters, one of the deepest boreholes they've drilled, and still no sign of water. Everyone begins to realize that they won't find water today. The dejected team begins to pull out the lengths of pipe, when suddenly they see it. Water. The pipes from 60 meters down are coming up wet. There isn't much, but just these few drops give the team hope. When a rock is dropped in, the team hears the unmistakable splash of water. They finish and cap the well just before dark. Tomorrow, they'll return to test the water quality and install a pump. Soon, these children will have water.
The Adventist television show Cross Connection is a live, in-depth Bible study broadcast every Tuesday on Hope Channel in the U.S. On this week's social media highlights, host Oleg Kostyuk and co-host Sergio Gonzalez talk about how the show uses Facebook and Twitter to build a community of viewers.
Cross Connection is a live, in-depth Bible study which airs on Hope Channel. And together with our viewers, we experience a real Jesus in the Gospels. And what is fascinating about it, because it's not just a Bible study, but it's also an active community of those who seek this relationship with Jesus.
Right, and because we're live, we're able to use social media to connect with our viewers in an active way. So you don't just watch us having our Bible study, you can take an active part in it through social media. And so people will comment throughout the show, we'll take their comments, read them on air, and we get all of this different unique perspectives from viewers all over the world.
But our discussion doesn't end when the cameras are off. Because what we do is Cross Connection is also a social media community that is live pretty much 24/7, and this is where seekers of Jesus Christ, they come together and we share thought-provoking posts, and at the same time we want to experience this real experience of how our head knowledge becomes our heart knowledge.
And if people want to join us, they can find us on social media, or they can watch us on Hope Channel Tuesday nights at 9 p.m.
A few simple precautions can help protect your home, church, or school from break-ins and burglaries. Karina Franca explains on this month's feature from Adventist Risk Management.
It's one of the most disheartening feelings when you discover that your home has been burglarized or your church vandalized. Let me share with you 3 simple techniques that can lower your risk of crime. These principles apply to your home, church, and school. Principle number 1 is to light it up. Most crime-related incidents take place at night when activities are hidden by darkness. Let your place be a beacon of light in your community. Not just in the spiritual sense, but also in the physical sense. Having a well-lit building and parking lot makes it a poor target for criminals. Principle number 2 is to create a process where whoever is last out of the house, church, or school checks all the windows and exits to be sure they are secured and locked. It doesn't do much good to lock the front door if the back door is open. Also, be sure to test the door when you leave to be sure it's locked correctly. Principle number 3 is to rekey your locks. No matter how closely you guard your keys, they eventually get into more hands than you can accurately track, and your risk increases. Keep a list of who has been given a key. Even if you have been careful and only given key to few trusted individuals, it is important to rekey every few years. These 3 techniques, lighting, doing a last person out walkthrough, and the regular rekeying, can lower your risk of experiencing a crime-related loss.
Adventist World Radio programming broadcast from a studio in Nepal is reaching farther than the ministry anticipated. Dowell Chow has more.
From being the only Buddhist country in the world, Nepal has turned to be a secular society. That has opened the door for more freedom in the country to preach the gospel. Even though during the time of the Maoists, the government, we had a studio in Nepal, and we were producing programs. Our studio was eventually taken away, and we stopped for a while producing programs. Then things began to change in Nepal. Little by little, the government opened up, and we were able to start producing programs again, just about 7 years ago. We started to produce programs not only for shortwave, but also to put programs on FM stations within the country. It was such a success that other stations outside of the Valley of Kathmandu asked us to bring our programs to their stations, and they would air them for us. In one of my visits to one of these stations, the manager told me that our program was the best program they had on the station. It was so good, they were just waiting anxiously to receive the programs and CDs that we took for them. This manager told me that the program is so good, people 12 villages away, counting 12 villages, were listening to the programs even though technically the signal should not reach those areas because of distance. We know who created the airwaves. God does. Carry the message every day, miraculously, to the many people in the mountains of Nepal, because this is Adventist World Radio serving the gospel in that country. God bless you. Thank you for praying for the people of Nepal.
Still ahead on ANN, young people oversee practical outreach in New York City.
But up next, a preview of this week's Bible study lesson.
It's kind of a kaleidoscope. It's a combination of events in the past, in the present, and the future all together, and it's compact in one book. I would say to each Seventh-day Adventist believer, we have a wonderful opportunity of taking the great controversy, this book that Ellen White herself said needs to be disseminated and spread and distributed like no other book.
I pray for the people that are sick so they can get better.
All around the world, children are praying at 7 in the morning, 7 in the evening, and 7 days a week.
I pray for everybody in Haiti that does not have a home.
Join the movement in your family today. 777 Prayer Kids.
Welcome back. The idea that God created life but doesn't intervene in creation first gained popularity during the Enlightenment. This week's Bible lesson explores how the sustaining power of Jesus offers a different reality. Ben Schoen explains.
In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Some think that God was involved with this world only in the beginning. There is a concept that people have held called deism, in which God only got this world started and then left it to run by itself after that. But this week, in our Bible study guides, we're prompted to think about Jesus as the ongoing provider and sustainer of this world. One key idea is that sustaining power is the same as creative power. There are several very pointed Bible texts that refer to this. Hebrews 1:3 refers to Christ as sustaining all things by His powerful word. Acts 17:28 says, "In Him we live and move and have our being." This biblical concept rules out that God left the world to evolve on its own. Well, this world is not the same as it always was. We know that evil came in and it's not perfect anymore. And so we find a confusion as to how to interpret the world around us. The book of Job has many good things to help us understand the relationship, because God was still involved, as he pointed out to Job, and yet there were evil things that happened in his life. As you study and join a Bible study group this week, think about, what does this mean for your relationship with God?
A team of young Adventists from around the world is devoting a year to mission service. The group recently arrived in New York City ahead of a major evangelism push in the region called NY13. We sent Tanya Musgrave to find out more.
I found myself in New York with the rare privilege of being able to film people from 14 different cultures. I didn't know what to expect, but what I found was a group made of gold. The dedication I saw was amazing. One missionary had gotten married only 2 weeks before. Another had to leave her 7-year-old daughter. It's a special group. They're doing outreach, disaster relief, and mission work. Essentially, they're training and getting hands-on experience in urban ministries so they can take what they learned here and put it into context back home. Not only are they training here, but also preparing the way for NY13, a huge campaign to show the love of God to the people of New York. There were some fantastic first-time experiences that I got to witness while I was there. One of the missionaries had never seen snow before. He came from Africa. And he'd also never tasted pizza before.
This way?
Yeah. Another missionary had never had an authentic American pretzel either. For sure, there's a lot more adventure ahead of them in ways not thought possible. It's a big job, and they'll learn a lot. There are going to be bumps along the way, because this has never been done before. But there are always bumps when you blaze a trail. God will, no doubt, use them in epic ways, and I can't wait to see how.
What should Facebook page administrators know about privacy and security controls? Megan Bronner shares some tips on this week's Tech Corner.
Whether you're a vocal supporter of social media or a bit of a skeptic, you undoubtedly realize the expanding number of social networks is always creating some new challenge. If you're a parent or a church or school social media coordinator, it's very likely you've also experienced some concern about children's online safety. Facebook and Twitter are wonderful tools for educators and parents alike, but it is very important to stay aware and informed of possible hazards. For one, always be conscious of public information. School or church coordinators are usually very careful about avoiding using last names or singling children out in photographs, but it's also important to pay attention to the comments section. Don't overlook the types of information that might come from a teacher or parent commenting on a picture or post. Administrators and parents should monitor comments to make sure no personal information is leaking through. School and church social media administrators should also be cautious about posting real-time updates. Keeping parents informed about school closings and other activities is a definite benefit to social media, but detailed real-time information about schedules and locations could potentially put children at risk. For the same reasons, any geotagging of posts or photographs should be weighed carefully. Lastly, parents and teachers should also be very careful about the amount of personal information visible on their own personal profiles, including birthdays and addresses. These categories can open you up to identity theft and potential account hacking, and children in your care could also be exposed to risk if your security is compromised. Facebook doesn't currently offer many options to restrict who sees your public posts, so if that form doesn't meet all your needs as a school administrator, you might consider creating a private group in addition to your school page. Join us next week on the Social Media Update as I continue the topic of children and social media. And tweet me a question at my personal account if there's something you'd like me to cover.
Every month at ANN Video, we sit down with a prominent church leader for a feature we call Dialogue. This month we spoke with Adventist World Church Vice President Artur Stella.
Thank you, Elder Stella, for joining us today. In your work of nurture and retention for the church, are you getting any feedback as you go through this process of seeking to find ways to basically help keep our brothers and sisters in the church?
Yeah, as you know, we have two subcommittees in the large committee. One is dealing with young people, young adults, and another one in general. And the issue of retention is quite a serious issue because, as you know, if we would only work with our young people, and if our young people, our children would stay in the church without doing evangelism, our church would be even bigger than it is now. So it's very important. But in our research, in our questionnaires that we have sent out through internet and also through the church channels, we are receiving a lot of interesting feedback. And one of the interesting feedbacks is that people are thankful who have left the church. They're thankful that someone has come to them or through internet is asking, why have you left and what would you recommend to improve in the church? And we are receiving quite interesting information. There will be a summit of nurture and retention, and we will then present all the outcomes of the research, and it will be a very interesting time when we can study the outcomes, and based on the outcomes, based on the responses of those who have left the church, try to develop some strategies, what we need to improve, what we can do better, so that our people would be happily serving the Lord in our churches.
Very important work. Thank you. Thank you, Elder Stelle, for joining us, and God bless you in your ministry.
Thank you.
Now let's turn to David Trim for a look at Adventist history. This week, milestones in the lives of missionaries to West Africa and China.
Welcome to This Week in Adventist History, a week of fires, innovations in America's West, and anniversaries of notable missionaries. On February 18 in 1902, most of Battle Creek Sanitarium's buildings were destroyed in a fire. The issue of reconstruction became divisive since John Harvey Kellogg, who was the director, was determined to build again bigger and better. But Ellen White and church leaders counseled otherwise. Ultimately, Kellogg gained control of the sanitarium from the church, but he eventually lost it again due to financial problems. During the whole of This Week in Adventist History, February 18 through 23 in 1915, a council of the Southern California Conference Committee recommended that the conference be split in two by creating a new Southeastern California Conference. On February 22 in 1893, that year's General Conference session voted funds to establish a school in Johnson County, Texas. Today, it is Southwestern Adventist University. And the same day, but a year later, on February 22, 1894, the first Seventh-day Adventist missionaries to West Africa, Edward Sanford and Carl Rudolph, arrived at Appam in what was then the Gold Coast, modern-day Ghana. And finally, on February 23 in 1958, John N. Anderson died in Lincoln, Nebraska. From 1902 to 1909, Anderson had served with his wife Emma as the first official Adventist missionaries to China. That was This Week in Adventist History.
Thanks for watching ANN. Join us next week for more news from the headquarters of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
In the meantime, did you know you can show ANN video headlines in your church or school? Just go to news.adventist.org, click on any video, and select Download Video in the bottom right-hand corner.
Our good news for the week comes from the New Testament book of Philippians. The passage says, "This is my prayer, that your love may abound more and more in knowledge and depth of insight, so that you may be able to discern what is best and may be pure and blameless for the day of Christ."
That's our program for this week, and remember, you can always visit news.adventist.org for daily news and videos. Until next time, God bless.